Welcome to FTB Fridays, and of course, a very happy new year to you and yours. Now, this is going to show up online Friday, January the 1st. It'll be the first thing FTB puts out in the new year. But of course, we're recording this on Wednesday, December the 30th. 2020. So if like the Martians invade on Thursday morning and we're not talking about it on Friday, you know why. I'm Jason C. McLean, your host. Let's meet our guests. Samantha Gold is an artist, activist, and FTB contributor. And Jerry Gabriel is a musician, a political observer, and FTB music writer. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
New Year.
Well, it seems
Yes.
to be.
So we have one topic for this special edition of FTB Fridays. Welcome. The topic is big, but it's expensive. It's 2020. So without assuming anything, how were you guys as 2020s?
So I think I'll go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. I'm immune compromised, so I have not had a haircut, for example, since last January, but I discovered that I saved a lot of money that way. Being immune compromised, I mean, most of my doctor's appointments became phone appointments. I came up with a very interesting way of sort of avoiding the virus while still making sure that all my needs were met. So, a lot of people offered to do my shopping for me. I have a bag from my balcony system where I can lower a bag. People started calling me Rapunzel, but I think that, from an artistic standpoint, I produced some of my best work. So while I do miss hugging people, I've been sort of pragmatic and just, literally watching the world and the craziness unfold from the comfort of a Wi-Fi connection and my balcony.
Yes, and we're going to be talking about that craziness. But Jerry, how was your 2020?
I'm lucky. I have a very strong immune system, so usually whenever I get anything, I'm able to deal with it really quickly. But I mean, I haven't been sick since last October, and I've just been, I've been careful. I always wear a mask wherever I go, and it's been a pretty challenging year for me because I'm kind of an extrovert. So forcing myself to stay in all the time is really difficult. I still try to go for walks and stuff, but I don't know. I found it very difficult year. And I mean, I tried to be like extra creative, but I find a lot of my influences are like going for walks or like being outside or doing things. And without those, I don't feel like I had a very particularly creative year. I wish I did. Honestly, I don't think I did personally. But
I think Newton invented calculus during a pandemic, but it's as for me,
like Samantha for sure, but not for me. It didn't work for me. I'm looking forward for this to be over.
For me, I'm also kind of an extrovert. Sorry, I was going to say I'm also kind of an extrovert. So 2020 for me has been a bit of a challenge. I think more the absurdity of everything, like the fact I didn't think that I was going to spend the early parts of the year watching Justin Trudeau at 11 a.m. every day to know how people are getting money, and then watching Francois Legault to find out if I can go to a bar. But in general, I spent a lot of time going in the summer was okay because I was spending a lot of time outdoors with people, but like now it's a little bit different. But speaking of, let's jump right in with Canadian politics and Justin Trudeau and COVID. So how do you, I think that this year's shown us what a minority government really can do.
Yes, Canada, minority governments are great, especially when the NDP holds the balance of power with the Liberals. I mean, it could happen reversal, but whenever that happens, usually good things happen. I've noticed for sure. Like we know that we got universal healthcare because of that during that kind of government. And this was just the perfect government to have. We saw what happens when you have a government that's not interested in governing during this time, like in the States, and what could happen. And I guess I don't love the Liberals, but I think they did an adequate job. They probably could have done a better job for sure. But had the Conservatives been in power, I don't think they would have done as good a job personally.
Well, I think I agree with you, Jerry, that they did an adequate job, but I feel like things could have been taken a bit further and a bit better. I found that the federal government certainly did a better job than the provincial government of having sort of more of stronger messaging about public precautions. But while they did need NDP support to sort of to sort of pass CERB and all that sort of thing, a lot of people were left behind by CERB. A lot of,
Yeah.
they, even when they expanded it to include entrepreneurs, a lot of freelancers like myself, for example, were completely left out. People who were forced to work under the table for various reasons were also left out. There was talk about how, work for sex workers got a lot more risky.
Right.
Yeah.
There are so many people who were left behind, and there was also that ongoing absurdity about people abusing CERB. When a lot of the people who filled out the forms and got the money, they needed it. They just didn't necessarily qualify.
Yeah, I mean, these abusers, a lot of them were homeless people. Those are abusers of the CERB, and they were living okay for a while, and people were complaining about that. I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean,
the kind of world we live in, because it's easier to go after people like that than, let's say, the corporations that took advantage of all the money that they were getting from the federal government that they were supposed to give for workers, and they just kept for themselves, or they paid their.
Well, they used it for stock buybacks.
Buybacks, exactly.
The problem is
that's legal. That's perfectly fine.
There was a very obvious solution, by the way, to keep them from abusing it, which was to put some strings on the money, and they didn't even bother.
Yeah.
That getting this amount is contingent to you guys keeping a certain number of employees, but a lot of them didn't bother to do that. And they claimed, they tried to cover it up by saying, if we hadn't gotten that money, we would have laid off a lot more. Really? Yeah. That's like a murderer saying that if I didn't wear gloves, I would have gotten even more blood everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, CERB, I actually did qualify for CERB, and I mean, believe it or not, spoiler alert, FTB isn't what pays my bills, but it actually was a lifesaver, and it was honestly the easiest government program you ever had to apply for. Literally Monday morning, I filled out the thing, and then Wednesday there was money. I think that what they should really have done is just honestly giving it to everyone, like everyone who is, instead of having to have made over 5,000, how about having to have made under a certain amount? Like really they should have looked at it that way. But
another thing is, I remember early on he had promised money to seniors, and seniors never got any help. I mean, if anyone needs help during this time, it's probably seniors, with the cost of everything going up. They got prescription drugs. They
have to order everything because they can't go out. A lot of them can't go out.
There was hardly any money for them, and it didn't make any sense. I don't know.
Well,
it was like a free half-ass program.
Well, it's not just seniors; it's people with chronic illnesses.
I
saw people who are around my age and older who even if they, first off, the qualifications for getting the federal disability pension, they're very narrow. For example, people with chronic pain, even when it's extremely debilitating, didn't qualify and often have to go to court to get their benefits. And what you saw was a lot of people who tried to switch to CERB, but because CERB was actually paying more than their federal disability pension, but because they were unable to work and make over X amount, they didn't qualify, and their family was left suffering as a result.
Yeah,
so
I mean, the thing is,
with chronic immune compromise, not just seniors, but immune compromise under the age of, who weren't senior citizens were left out by this.
Yeah.
Are left out.
And certainly, I mean, everyone's like, the conservatives are all obsessed about people trying to cheat this and that, or trying to claw it back. I guess it just shows me how, we are lucky that they weren't the ones in power. At least Trudeau was not listening to them, was listening to the NDP. I think the NDP got some great stuff. And honestly, I don't care about Trudeau's We scandal. I think even that in a normal year, that would be important. He had this weird little cult, but honestly, I didn't really care. I cared about how people are getting taken care of during what's going on.
Yes, but he did use the pandemic to basically give him immunity.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't agree. I mean, it's a sly thing. It's a very liberal thing to do. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
There you have it. But still, I mean, I mean, it wasn't a big deal because we had to that was the main focus. Like everything else, no matter what you did, took a second, you know?
Yeah.
Like even in the States, like no matter what Trump did, it didn't matter because the pandemic was number one.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I mean, at least in Quebec, Francois Legault started off this pandemic looking really good. Everyone was really impressed with how he was doing. Excuse me. Not COVID. Francois Legault started off looking really good. But then by the end of it, it seems like he's passing laws that sound like, you know, like, okay, certain stores are open for half the day on Fridays, and then only people with blonde hair are let in on Tuesdays. Like it's not that, but it seems like he's all over the place. Like he's switched from being the brilliant guy to the guy who actually makes Doug Ford look good.
The problem with Legault's response is it's like you said, originally his response was perfect. Close the schools, close the bars, the restaurants, limited sort of social interaction. And I think what happened is, frankly, his economic interests got the better of him, because after a certain point, there was, everybody knew that the reason why they reopened the schools in September was basically to force their parents back to work, that they couldn't use childcare responsibilities as a very legitimate excuse for not going back to work. And because of all these sort of wishy-washy mixed messages, people didn't know what rules to follow and what not to follow. And add that to the fact that we had really nice weather up until I think November or something like that.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, you know, I saw this, you know, a lot of my friends were warning me, you know, don't go out and all this stuff, because a lot of people were so confused by the mixed messaging that they just said, to heck with it, we're going to do what we want.
I mean, I went to a park in the summer and I saw a family of 40 having a barbecue together.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like I didn't understand what was going on, and I didn't blame the family because there was complete mixed messaging all summer. And it was because we nipped this in the butt properly the first time, it wouldn't be in such a bad shape. And I work in the restaurant industry, and Legault is despised because he's just basically destroyed restaurants. And he's done it by doing a really bad job of handling this crisis.
Yeah, it wasn't bars
and not compensating businesses properly either, which is just, it's been a disaster. Like even even his closing down and giving like $15,000, hardly any businesses have qualified for it. On top of that, no one's gotten the money yet.
Yeah. Well, one thing I found at the beginning of the pandemic, or at the beginning when they first opened up bars, there was that initial outbreak at a bar, I think on the South Shore. But other than that, all the outbreaks have been at schools, not in bars or restaurants. Bars and restaurants have been following the rules I went to a I didn't go to a bar. I went to a restaurant once during the pandemic, sat down, server was wearing a mask. We were outdoors, proper social distancing, like the tables were washed, this and that. And I also went and hung out with people in parks. I mean, keeping a bit of distance there, but outdoors. But yeah, I think the kind of activity it was the schools. That's really where the problems started when we got back to where we are.
The thing that infuriates me the most about the school thing is that Legault presents himself as a capitalist populist. And last I checked, capitalist philosophy is all about giving people the choice. So for me, the obvious solution was make it 100% the parents' discretion. Because as it stands, I know that they're on the holiday or whatever until the 11th, but the way that they were allowing for exemptions if the kids lived with somebody who was immune compromised is that the criteria for qualifying for getting out of in-person schooling is extremely narrow. And even if, say, you lived with a relative who was immune compromised, if they weren't part of your immediate family, you didn't qualify. Not to mention the fact that in order to qualify for this exemption, you required a doctor's note. When every doctor I've spoken to, and being immune compromised, I speak to a lot, via my phone appointments and whatnot, they all told me the same thing, which is that they don't have the time to write the doctor's notes that are required. Yeah. Okay, so I say, you guys are capitalists, aren't you? What's so terrible about letting parents decide for themselves if they are willing to put their kids at risk or not? How is that so difficult? I thought this was what you guys stood for.
Yeah. Well, pure capitalism, if you want to go to that, that's what's been happening with the response south of the border in a lot of places, especially with Donald Trump. But let's take a step back. in American politics, this is the year that started off with Donald Trump getting impeached, and then he almost went to war with Iran. And then there was there was news in the first. Australia was on fire too, internationally. Like Brexit was going to happen in Britain, and then and then all of a sudden everything became about COVID, and the response there has just been like that was like dominated for several months until he even took over like the Democratic primaries. Like that would, I mean, I think like one of the reasons I think why Sanders dropped out early is because it looked like Biden was going to win, and he couldn't, in order to keep fighting it in those states, he would have had to have done in-person, like knocking on doors, big rallies and stuff, and he didn't think it was safe to do it.
Which is very pragmatic, but unfortunately for a lot of young people, and there's study after study saying that that the younger generations are leaning more to the left. They lost their champion in Bernie Sanders, and a lot of people were extremely distraught by that. But at least, I find that one of the things that has at least kept me sane is to take Schadenfreudian glee in seeing some of the worst politicians' attitudes come back and bite them in the butt. And a good example, I believe, oh my goodness, I think it was in Connecticut or Oregon. It was an anti-climate change politician. His house got devoured by a wildfire.
Yeah.
And,
or recently, the congressman who got elected, who was against the COVID restrictions, he got COVID and he died.
Oh.
And he's not making it to Congress. It's crazy.
Donald
I
Trump
don't wish death on anyone, but
I think we need to give ourselves permission to
stuff.
laugh at it, because we'll cry if we don't.
I know.
Well, Donald Trump got COVID, and I know there were people like openly hoping that it turned for the worse. But yeah, Donald Trump, but of course he got the best treatment in the world, and they pumped him on a bunch of drugs. Like the last thing you want is that guy on a bunch of drugs. Like he's already.
People say 2016 is the year of Trump, but I'm going to say no. 2020 is Trump next to COVID. It's like this was the year where Trump kind of broke the world.
This is the year when people had to correct the president and say, "Don't drink bleach."
Yeah, literally, you had to say that. It was crazy. It was a crazy year.
But I think ultimately, it's what's scary is that Biden. Okay, admittedly, the vote for Biden was a vote for you'll do. Anyone but this guy, for the most part. I mean, there's some people who genuinely like the guy. He seems like a genuinely likable kind of guy.
He is the most milquetoast politician they could have possibly gotten.
Yeah.
It was basically the most rock the boat politician, status quo politician we can come up with right now.
And yet there are people saying that Hugo Chavez, who's dead, is conspiring with the Republican governor of Georgia to bring in Joe Biden so Antifa and communism take over.
But Jason, we should be honest that this might be the breaking point of the Democratic Party, because I don't think the progressives will stand for another middle politician. And also you can even see right now how split they are. Even with the COVID, the $2,000 increase in stimulus, a whole bunch of Democrats in the Congress voted against that.
Yeah, the blue dogs, the quote unquote the corporate Democrats.
And these people have been running the Democratic Party for a very long time and have more sway than the progressives.
Progressives are slowly taking over. You get AOC, you got there's some new Jamal Bowman was primaried someone. There's
this is the
Cori Bush.
Them though for the Democrats is that I find that the centrist Democrats will vote for a Republican than a progressive, and we see that in Canada. We've seen that in Canada. It's always the case. The Liberal will never vote for the NDP member, will vote for the Conservative.
Well, I think that if there's one sort of positive that you can draw from the crisis and how it affected the U.S. is that it kind of stripped American values and the facade that America likes to put on. It kind of stripped it bare, because what you're seeing by and large in the manifestations of sort of QAnon and the anti-mask movement is that, the true American value is frankly selfishness. That you are seeing, a lot of sort of middle class and wealthier white people who are refusing something as basic as mask wearing, that they're claiming it's all about freedom when so many of these anti-maskers, they're white. They haven't a clue what real oppression is. They don't know what it's like to go into a store and get the side eye purely for the color of their skin or the religious symbol that they're wearing. And this whole note, and I feel like everybody suspected that there was that basic entitled selfishness. Everybody suspected that was the true American value, that white entitled selfishness. But the pandemic really stripped that bare and showed and exposed it for everybody to see. Good example, that woman from Georgia who got 4 months in jail for breaking quarantine. Did anybody else hear about that?
No. I usually hear about the ones from Florida, but Georgia.
Well, it's related, okay? Because her family's a Trump supporter. All right. This is a woman who sadly is pre-med, and I say sadly because it's such an obvious mistake that she shouldn't have made. But it is indicative of sort of the American belief that the rules should not apply to them if they're not. Because she went to the Cayman Islands. She had a COVID test immediately after she got off the plane. Okay. And they told her to self-isolate for 2 weeks. And to make sure that she obeyed the quarantining rules, they put a tracking bracelet on her. Day later, she asked them to release the tracking bracelet or loosen it because it was allegedly cutting into her wrist. The day after that, she went to her boyfriend's jet ski competition, okay, and was reported by several attendees for breaking quarantine. She was originally given I think, suspended sentence, and then they changed it when they saw that requesting that the bracelet be loosened indicated premeditation. They put her in jail for 4 months. And call me a jerk, but every time one of these, entitled anti-masker whatevers gets a real sentence, be it a hefty fine or a custodial prison sentence, I feel like an angel gets its wings.
Yeah. You know what scares me though is, okay, Joe Biden got the most votes of any presidential candidate in US history, this time even beating Obama. But the second most votes, even beating Obama, Donald Trump. That means there are millions of people that actually thought that guy should be reelected.
Yep.
Now, hopefully they all believe that Biden lost. Like, they don't all think that he was robbed or whatever. But like, that's a really scary thought.
Well, I know that at least in Florida, the Cuban population overwhelmingly voted for Trump. And the reason, and it just goes to show that, like, for example, the Latino vote, most of which actually went to Biden, but that it's not a monolith. Because what the Trump campaign actually did was they very effectively campaigned arguing that Biden was going to be another Castro. And you had a lot of either Cuban refugees or descendants of Cuban refugees that literally had that sort of red scare in them that ended up voting for Biden.
So it wasn't all MAGA that voted him in.
No, and one of the things that I noticed is that Republicans were quite effective in sort of, first off, playing into white fear. Trump's whole thing about how suburbia was going to disappear. What he meant by that was, when people of color started moving into the cities for work, you had something called the white flight, where basically white families fled to suburbia and, bought homes there, basically turning these suburban areas, almost entirely white. And so when Trump talks about suburbia, what he means is basically white-only areas. When he would say that if Biden got elected, suburbia would disappear, he was talking about exclusively white areas. And just playing into that prejudice, playing into that fear, unfortunately, really resonated with a white majority.
What the RNC, there was
terrified of brown people.
Yeah, the McCluskeys, I call them Ken and Karen, the two guys who shot the gun, and they were
Karen and Ken.
Yeah, they made it interesting. They made a point about like they were. It was a stupid point. They were saying like the suburb. They didn't even live in the suburbs. They're like they were living in a gated community, and they're like, and the crazy anarchist who came to our community leading the bunch is going to be in Congress. That's true, except she's not a crazy anarchist. She was actually one of the leaders of the local Black Lives Matter, Cori Bush, who actually was elected to Congress, and she told an interesting story in Congress. Apparently, she wore it was a T-shirt or a pin. It was a pin. It was like, I am Breonna Taylor, or her mask. Her mask said, I am Breonna Taylor, like obviously a reference to Breonna Taylor. And there were people coming up to her going, hi, Breonna, I'm so-and-so.
Yeah.
Like other Republican politicians, like people elected. Like,
that's hilarious and sad.
Yeah.
One good thing I think happened in U.S. politics this year was the rise of women of color in U.S. politics. Not just Kamala Harris, but the power of Stacey Abrams in Georgia, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, what she did in Georgia is amazing. Like turning Georgia blue is crazy.
Yeah.
Think about it.
They
It's
might get the
literally in
Senate
the
because
middle
of her
the
too.
South. And to do that is just the way she did it is she really got a grassroots organization down, and she was able to do it. And she's a brilliant woman. Like, you ever hear her speak? I mean, I think one day she will be either governor or definitely she'll be a senator, because she's got the chops for it. I mean,
probably, yeah.
You also saw an overwhelming number of LGBTQI people elected to Congress and the Senate. And another thing I was particularly gleeful about is the vice president, or the current vice president, Mike Pence, who is a notorious misogynist and a homophobe and a transphobe, was actually forced to swear some of them in. And that for me was, first off, I was disappointed that these members of Congress dressed so sedately, because if I found out that Mike Pence was going to be swearing me in, I'd put on the biggest, gayest, most rainbow outfit I could find. I would, if I were male, I would show up, I would show up in full drag, and I would swear with my fake fingernails on the Bible.
I think there actually is a dress code in Congress, though. Like, I don't think you can.
I'm sure they could find a way to make it work.
They could find a way to make it work. Exactly. Yeah. Well, what has been working in 2020 is online entertainment. Now, a lot of our local venues, we don't have that, but a lot of streaming services. People have been watching them like crazy. There's a Warner Brothers announced at first it was just going to be Wonder Woman, but then they announced that their entire 2021 movie slate is going to be released in the States online at the same time that it's released in theaters.
That's pretty incredible. I mean, it's the year of streaming. Took over entertainment, basically. And
I don't
think it's a bad thing. I mean, I like going to the movies, but I mean, it was a necessary thing to happen. And if you decided that, I'm going to go to the movies, like a movie like Tenet, it got destroyed in terms of like how much money it made. So it's not a situation where, unfortunately, movie theaters shouldn't be open because of the close vicinity that you're in when you're in a theater. And it's just, you can have them open, but you would need to have like maybe a couple of people per row, which they weren't doing properly, I'm sure.
I do have one criticism of the streaming services, which is, and maybe I'm just a curmudgeon or whatever, but there are too many. Okay, and I don't know about you, but I can't afford to have multiple subscription services. Now, you have a friend who has an account, whatever, but there's six, seven streaming services.
It's worse in the States. In Canada, we have Crave, which encompasses a lot of different American services.
They need to come up with some deal between them, because it really sucks if you really want to see one show in particular and you would love to watch it legally, you need to.
I would even pay for like a timeshare where you can just like flip them.
Yeah. But aren't you kind of talking about? Aren't we just inventing cable?
Yeah,
we're just basically going back to cable.
without the ads. Because I don't know about you guys, but I've been watching a lot of YouTube, and I've noticed that YouTube ads have gotten 100 times more obnoxious. It's at the point where I will refuse to buy from a brand the more frequently I see their YouTube ads. I will never buy a Kashi bar as long as I live, because there are too many Kashi commercials on YouTube, even for videos that last as little as 5 minutes. They get interrupted by ads. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And I get that they want people to pay, but it's too much now.
And on top of that, they're also paying their creators a lot less than they used to. And they're using an algorithm which is basically giving advantage to like big time production companies and such.
Yeah.
So if you're not mainstream, it's like really hard to swim now in these platforms.
Yeah.
And,
but one thing, and also
like there's going to be an answer until someone does something about it, either create something that's better. Because YouTube is becoming almost unusable with the amount of commercials you have to sit through now.
Yeah. Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe.
It's interesting because I follow a lot of makeup videos, given that I do makeup tutorials on my professional Facebook page since the start of the pandemic. Just a little distraction and a little political commentary. And I've noticed that even some of the OG YouTubers, the ones that have millions of subscribers, are talking about how they really need those likes when that hasn't been an issue for them in the past. Emily Noel comes to mind, who is a fantastic, sort of very warm makeup reviewer. And she started to ask people for likes and subscribes because I guess she's not being compensated anywhere near as much.
Yeah,
No, it seems to be a problem. I don't know what's going on, but definitely squeezing the money out of the creators is wrong.
yeah. But one thing
Especially
is like,
given that most of them don't have money.
Another
one
example.
service I'm
Another
service
problem is
I'm-
also Spotify not paying their artists what they should be paying either. There's a ton of streaming services that have that kind of issue.
one streaming service I'm glad I have is actually Disney Plus because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Represent.
Nice.
I find your lack of cheer disturbing. Forget the box. Represent. Yeah, that's representing us. Jerry, what are you wearing?
I'm just wearing a
So-
Sorry, it's just the way you said, what are you wearing? Oh.
okay. No. Okay, but so like obviously the big one for this year was the last season of Clone Wars and Mandalorian. That was big for me. I also like the Umbrella Academy. I got into that.
Discovery's gotten a lot better this season, I find.
Which one?
Too. Discovery.
Star Trek Discovery.
Trek.
What shows have you
I
guys
haven't
been
seen
watching
that
or
yet.
binging?
I've been watching. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I've been watching The Exorcist, and I thought, okay, it's a TV show of The Exorcist. How good can this be? It's pretty freaking awesome, actually.
I've actually, I collect a lot of DVD and Blu-ray, so I've been watching a lot of that. But I've also, maybe it's because I have a law degree, you know, I'm Forget the Box's legal columnist, but I'm a true crime junkie. So I've been binging even sort of the historical crime TV shows. So Murder Maps is one of my favorites. It's got this very staid, it's a BBC production, but a very staid British sort of narrator. But and also Netflix has a lot of shows about historical events that are part, you know, actors acting them out, but they also have historical commenters. So it's kind of like half, and I'm really enjoying that format. I saw a really good one on the rise of Julius Caesar. There was one on Caligula. There was another one on the Emperor Commodus, the guy who was featured in the movie Gladiator by Joaquin Phoenix. And there's one about the Russian czars as well.
I saw
sex
this
scenes in that, though, not safe for kids.
really interesting one about New York crime families in the 70s and 80s.
I think I might have seen that one.
On Netflix. I was into it until at the very end when one of the big hero cops was Rudy Giuliani, and then I was
yeah.
Well, he was a good guy back in the day. Like he was a defender of corruption, and now he's. I guess he's like he started off as a Jedi and slowly turned into a Sith.
who gets or
That's
an
a funny-
ineffective Sith who gets punked
It's
by Borat.
interesting because there's a really great video on YouTube by journalist Keith Olbermann. I don't know if you've heard of him, but
Yeah.
he's a gay guy who covers baseball events normally for ESPN. And he talked about how people are like, what in the world happened to Rudy Giuliani? You know, he seemed so lucid. And he literally looks right into the camera and he's got this perfect sort of righteous anger, deadpan type face and a wonderfully deep voice. He's a treat to listen to. And he said that Giuliani's been this way for 20 years. And they said, what about 9/11? And he said, okay, he had 2 good weeks. And he goes into detail about how incredibly obtuse and tone deaf Giuliani has been for years, pointing out that he had a particular vendetta against Biden because Biden ran against him. I believe it was in the Democratic primaries where Biden said that, you know, every other sentence contains a noun, a noun, an adjective, and 9/11 was Biden's big coup de grace against Giuliani. But I gotta say that Giuliani's big crowning moment for me this year was not actually his, it wasn't the whole speech that he gave in front of the landscaping business and sex shop. It was his appearance in the Borat movie.
Borat movie, yes.
Who saw that? Who saw that? I mean, I even
saw
made
that.
Christmas cookies with the mankini, with the Borat mankini.
Yeah.
If you're curious, Jerry, I'll send you a picture.
Yeah, little plug here. You reviewed that on FTB Reviews, which we've sort of done a soft launch of, but in the new year, we're going to actually be doing that more full. It's a sister site to Forget the Box. It's reviews of shows, movies, entertainment news, trailers, stuff like that. It's ftbreviews.com. That's in the new year. But yeah, I saw that. And also just about Giuliani, I actually remembered that John Oliver did a piece on him too, how he basically the same thing, that he was always like that. And occasional FTB contributor Dirk Cosmonaut basically said he's the guy who ruined New York, and he took credit for some policies Dinkins did for the lowering of crime, but he basically ruined New York.
My understanding is that one of the worst things Giuliani did for New York was he exacerbated racial tensions with starting stop and frisk.
Yeah.
Which, as you know, the cops, with not the best, how do I put this? With not the best sort of non-racist attitude, were disproportionately targeting Latin Americans and Black people.
Yeah.
And John Oliver actually did a bit on police violence, where they talked about how at one point in New York, the police's union, they didn't like some kind of deal that was trying to curb their powers. So they stopped policing for 2 weeks, and everybody said, oh no, crime's going to happen. And nothing did.
Yeah.
People got less tickets. That was pretty much it.
Yeah. One thing that he did that I think really changed New York and just made it kind of an unlivable city was he got rid of the rent controls in the city, and that's why you don't have artists that live in New York anymore.
Yeah. That's why you have Disney in Times
really
Square.
Sad. He just basically got rid of the soul like early on of that city before any other city got out of control, expensive, and I think other cities followed suit because now rent is like out of control in a lot of cities.
So I guess before we go,
it's interesting because I saw a Netflix series called Dirty Money, where there was a whole episode that actually referred to Kushner's company, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law. He looks like a Q-tip. Anyway, you can laugh, it's funny.
Yeah.
So talking about how Kushner was systematically forcing people out of their homes in New York in places that maybe necessarily had rent control and where there were massive tenant rights issues.
Yeah.
Basically committing rent evictions and what in Quebec, at least from a legal standpoint, you would call sort of a disguised eviction, where what they do is they'd sort of start construction projects in apartments adjacent to try to alienate people out of their homes, creating water leaks and all sorts of stuff like that. And the impression I get is that Giuliani's been, complicit in this sort of thing.
yeah,
I'm sure that they've been working together somehow all along, and they know each other for a long time. So they all know.
The douche doesn't fall far from the bag. Is that the expression?
yeah. So
Can I say
I guess maybe like we haven't done predictions of this is not the regular podcast, but like hopes for 2021 or predictions.
The earth doesn't split in half and like everyone survives. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right.
I hope that the vaccination schedule that our government set out is actually followed, and everybody, the crybaby anti-vaxxers aside, that everybody is vaccinated by the summer.
Yeah.
Against this dreadful virus.
I hope
Everybody
everyone's
who can be
vaccinated.
who doesn't have a medical exemption.
Yeah, and once everyone's vaccinated, I hope that what I'm going to do when I get vaccinated, I'm gonna go to a music festival. I don't care if I don't like the music. I'm just gonna go to the biggest, most packed festival. I'm gonna take a crowded metro back. I'm gonna go to a karaoke bar, and then go home and have a house party.
Can I say something very sad?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go in-store shopping because being diabetic, I have not done that in a long time, where I can actually touch the produce I want to buy.
Yeah.
I miss that. I haven't done, myself and other immune compromised people haven't done that in a very long time.
Yeah. No, it's hopefully 2021 will be better. Well, Samantha, we can follow you, your artist page on Facebook, I believe.
Yep. www.facebook.com/SamIamArt.
And Jerry,
you're
I don't have Twitter right now coming, but I have some projects coming in the near future. I'll let you know.
And also, I'm at Jason C. McLean on Twitter, and you can also Instagram. Actually, my Instagram, I take pictures of trees and things like that. But I want to thank you guys very much. Happy New Year again to both of you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
And of course, we're going to be doing this every Friday, FTB Fridays, you can follow Forget the Box on Twitter and Facebook at Forget the Box. Give us a like, a share, smash that like button here on YouTube, and follow us every day on forgetthebox.net. And a very happy New Year.